And there was a wood fire to heat the building?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And was that a job that was performed by the teacher to start the fire, or did...
I don't really remember that the teacher, maybe she had to keep it going during the day, but I don't know how it got started in the morning, no.
Now, your teacher, the teachers that you had, were they from Belvedere, or did they rent, or did they stay board there?
My first grade teacher was Dora Marcette, that lived right across the road from the school. It's now where Steve Locke lives. That's where they lived. But later on, I remember we had two teachers from Johnston. One was Doris Elwood, and the other was Ruth Sweet. And I can't remember whether one was Doris was upstairs or teaching or downstairs, but they were both from Johnson, and they boarded with my Aunt Reba Thomas.
She lived close by?
Yes, she lived right down there where the little white church is now.
Okay. Were you a good student?
I don't know about that.
What was your favorite subject? Did you have a favorite?
Well, I don't know really. I remember that we were supposed to memorize the Gettysburg Address, and some of us didn't do it as we should have at a certain time. And I remember there were 3 or 4 of us girls that had to stay after school because we hadn't memorized it. That I remember.
Now, did you have school activities like throughout the year, like programs and so forth? That you didn't have any of that?
We didn't have any physical education. Nothing like. We just went outdoors and ran and jumped and screamed and hollered. That was our exercise.
What about discipline? Were you disciplined in school?
I think we had good discipline. I don't remember of anything very bad happening. No, I really don't.
Were the teachers allowed to spank if they thought necessary?
No,
No.
I don't think so. I think they did a lot of shaking of the kids. But no. And maybe the ruler, use the ruler on the hand.
But you didn't have things like Valentine parties and so forth like that? No. Now, Stub Wells was in your class?
He started school with me,
okay.
first grade.
Yeah, I think I had heard that. Okay. Do you have any idea, I'm backing up a little bit, how your parents met?
Not really.
Not really?
No. I know my dad went to People's Academy, and my mother went to Brigham Academy. And they were young there, and probably just because they lived in the center there together.
How many students would have been like in the first 4 grades, about approximately?
Oh, I'd say 20 anyway.
Okay. And were they pretty evenly divided between the classes? I mean,
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Do you remember any other names of classmates that you had?
There were some Tatro girls. There was Isla Tatro, and Arlie Tatro, and Beatrice Tatro, and they had some brothers. There was Percy Tatro, Harlan Tatro. It was a big family, and they lived up toward Belvedere Corners, up that lane. There was another guy that used to come to school. His name was Jake Robtoy. And usually he'd been eating leeks, and you could imagine what the schoolroom was like after he came.
Yes. Now, did you go home for lunch, or did you bring your lunch?
Yes.
You went home
for lunch.
Okay. Did the majority of the pupils, go home for lunch, or did...
Well, the ones that lived like up toward the corners, I think maybe they brought their lunch. I'm not positive about that. But I know there were quite a lot of us that would start to go down to the center, to the village. The school was up toward the corners a little ways, out of the center, right across from where Steve Locke lives now.
You attended Sunday school,
Oh, yes.
and that was at the little white church?
I went to church with my Grandma Wescombe on Sundays. And Aunt Mary Potter was a Sunday school teacher. She was also the organist. And I used to love to go to church with Grandma Wescombe.
Now, the minister was someone who came or stayed there? Or did you have a permanent minister or someone?
There was an old man that lived in town, well, not old, Alan Chandler, and his wife lived right there across from the store. And he was our minister. He read the Bible, and I don't think probably the man had ever had any formal training or schooling. I don't think he'd ever had anything like that. And then sometimes maybe a minister would be traveling through, and there was one I remember, his name was Mr. Brock, and he gave all of us children that were in Sunday school a Bible, a little Bible. I still have it.
And now, was this one that did the sermons and everything, was he allowed to do like, baptism and so forth, or was that done by the visiting ministers?
By the visiting ones, I believe.
Okay. What kind of tasks did you have to do growing up, in the house? I mean, you had...
My mother was a good woman, too. She was quite strict, and we had to work. I had to work. On Wednesday, I remember, I had to wash all the lamp chimneys, and when I got old enough to do it, and cut the wicks and fill them so that the lamps are all ready to burn again. Mm-hmm. That I didn't like to do, but somewhere there's a snapshot of me on our porch, and I had a dust mop in my hand. And those days they used to wear a dust cap, and I had a dust cap on. I couldn't have been more than 10, 11 years old.
And you and Phyllis shared doing dishes and so on and so forth?
Yes. I think Phyllis got away with not doing as much as I had, because she was younger.
Now, did your mom have a particular wash day? Was there one day that she did washing?
On Monday.
Always on Monday?
Always on Monday.
Uh-huh.
And that was a hard day, too, the way they had to do their washing in those days.
And did she require you to learn how to bake and cook and so forth?
I don't remember that I did very much of that, no.
Okay. Did you have did you have a chance to work outside? I mean, like babysitting or helping anyone else, in town, or you didn't?
The only one that I can ever remember of helping with children was Charlie Slayton, who married Mildred Powell from here. And they had quite a big family, and they lived in the old Woodman home. And she had this, Steve Slayton. Do you know Steve?
Right. Mm-hmm.
He was a little boy, and he was the sweetest little thing. And I liked him so well that I'd go over and take him and play with him. That's the only one I remember.
Mm-hmm. Did you receive any money for doing this? No, it was just done. So.
No.
And you did you have an allowance or anything growing up? No. Where did your parents do the bulk of their shopping?
Right at Grandpa Thomas's store.
Okay. Uh-huh.
He had everything in that store. He had a lot of dry goods, and he had shoes and boots, and even had dresses. I can remember he had dresses, and then of course he had the groceries, and he used to have some beautiful chocolates that came in boxes like that, and they were put into, he had a glass, I don't know what to call it, where he displayed these boxes of chocolates. And you opened at the back a sliding door. And say at the old man that was running the store, if I, by any chance, opened that door to get a chocolate, he'd yell at me. But Phyllis could have gone in and got a handful, and he'd never say a word.
Now, were things in bulk?
Yes, a lot of it. Although there were some things on the shelf, because I can remember going downstairs and sitting with Faye and Phyllis probably, and he'd look up on the up on the shelves, and he'd say, "I can see." Well, we'll say, "I can see a K," and it would be on a box of cereal, Kellogg's.
Okay.
Or something like that. We learned a lot from him, just doing things like that.
Mm-hmm.
He spent a lot of time with us.
Now, the post office, you said, did you have to go down to pick up your mail?
Mm-hmm.
You went down every day to pick up your
That
mail?
was a treat, especially in the summer. We were, for instance, I and Hersa and so on, we'd walk down early evening because the mail came up twice a day. Edson Bassett brought the mail up in the morning, and then he went back. Then they brought it up again late afternoon, and that's when we went down to pick it up in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And we had lots of fun going down. Just what else was it to do? I remember one time we were going through the covered bridge, and this young guy had gone along ahead. His name was Owen Eldred, and he climbed up in the rafters over the top of the bridge there, inside. And as we were walking through, I don't know how many of us girls were, maybe just Hersa and I, or Amanda and I. He let out this terrible yell. Well, it scared us almost to death. We didn't know he was up there. Things like that happened that I remember.
Did you have a boy that you were sweet on in the early?
No, not in high
no
school.
boyfriend,
No
boyfriend.
No, not in elementary school.
Okay. Then after you had gone through you went through 8 grades there,
Mm-hmm.
and then what happened when you went to high school?
I had to live here in Jeff during the week. I lived with Carrie Lease and Will Lease down on Lower Church Street. I think it's where Connie Edwards lives now. I boarded with her. And on Friday night, about 4 o'clock or 4:45, something like that, we'd have to walk up to the Cambridge Junction. There was Manta Potter, Hersa, Fred Holbrook, Vera Woodard, Gordon Woodard, can't think of any others, and the man who went up through with the mail was Del Stockwell. Now, what was he to you?
My great-grandfather.
Yes. Well, we'd all get into his wagon, or in the winter, into his sleigh, and we'd start for Belvedere. We'd stop in Waterville, where he lived, so he could change the horse, get another one, and he'd eat his supper. And we would be invited to go in and sit down, wait inside, especially nights when it was so cold. And then we'd start for Belvedere.
Now, was he living there where Emma and Kenneth Davis live now?
That's right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And we'd get to Belvedere 9 o'clock, maybe.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And my dad and others would send down, by Dell, some big lap robes to put over us and so on, so we wouldn't freeze to death.
And you did that every Friday night. And then how